Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a sustainability expert from Estonia, Kaidi Tamm. Kaidi, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thank you. Kaidi is a senior expert and the head of SEI Tallinn's Sustainable Cities and Resilient Communities Unit. So,
Yeah.
Kaidi, let me start by my first question.
Mhm.
Tell me about your own journey and what led you into the field of sustainability.
A very good question. So, actually, what has interested me since the beginning, since when I can remember, is what is good life to different people? What does it mean, and how to achieve this good life?
Mm.
So, this led me to study semiotics and cultural studies at the University of Tartu. And there I looked into utopias. Utopias are sort of like they can be seen as a model of wishing for a better world, for a better social order, for a better situation. So even from the ancient times, we can find like ancient myths and stories about a better world, which is somewhere. If you travel far enough, you will find it. And over the years, over centuries, also, for example, in the Middle Ages, in literature, utopia was used as a genre for doing social criticism.
Right.
And some people, like Thomas More, he was beheaded because of this social criticism, but others were more successful. And then later on, when secularization took more hold, then it was also possible for different groups in the society to start trying out these different social forms. So different communities were started. And different ways of life were tried and tested. And this was interesting to me. And then I took a break of a couple of years from studies. I worked at Estonian National Museum as a communication manager. And then I was in contact with a lot of empirical studies, empirical research. So I decided to go and for my master's to explore why some communities want to create a better society and what they aim, what is specifically their sort of like focus. And I chose a community which had been developing in Estonia, which is called Lillearu. And I did my field work there. I did interviews, and it was very surprising because I was looking forward to finding like a scheme, a plan for doing a better social order or better interaction with nature or a better economic situation. But actually, this all was secondary, and their primary goal was, utopia. When you look at the roots of the word, then basically it means a place that doesn't exist, non-place. And basically in Lillearu, indeed, what they were aiming for was the inner sphere, not some kind of change so much in the outer world, which work was to follow. But first of all, it was about finding your true self, and from that learning to live in a different way, which changed also your relationships to the world, to other people, and the way that you do economic transactions, and so on. This was indeed a surprise. But from Lillearu, basically, I started to focus more on the human and nature interactions. And Lillearu was part of Global Ecovillage Network, which is a global network of different communities which try to indeed create a better social, economic, and also ecological, most of all, situation. And from there, basically, I understood that sustainability is maybe the biggest utopia of our time, because utopia is also a concept which is like a goal, it's like a wish, like something that we want to move towards, but which somehow always transcends. So if we land on the shore of utopia, then somehow we have to set sail again, because somewhere on the horizon we see another goal. So it's fleeting. And we have to say that when we look at the sustainability situation in the world today, then sustainability is the same. We set certain goals, we move closer to them, and we see new goals, and we see that we haven't achieved. And so it's a continuous process in that sense.
Wonderful.
So I went on to Germany. I will just finish very fast the story. So I went to Germany and did my PhD. And there I looked at the governance and civil society attempts to understand and practice sustainable development. And there basically I found, I was looking forward, I was hoping for a more diverse result. But in the end, I actually still came to the conclusion that there are still these two perspectives that mainly inform different social groups. And we can call them in different ways. I call them meta-narratives of change, but we can also call them strong and weak sustainability. And basically, these perspectives boil down to that. What is the relationship to nature? Is it with strong sustainability? It's very different from weak sustainability. But I think that we might go on to these questions later on. So, and basically just from there, from Germany, I worked there for 12 years in different universities as a researcher, as a teacher, and helped to develop several programs for sustainable development. And then 2 years ago, I returned to Estonia and work at Stockholm Environment Institute, Tallinn Center, and also an Estonian business school, and hope to proceed with supporting these transitions and transformations.
Thank you. So let's now talk a little bit about the whole concept of sustainability. Can you explain to me the concept of the sharing economy and the potential impact it has on sustainability?
Well, I would maybe start from a few steps back from sharing economy. So we mentioned strong and weak sustainability, and we can say that, well, the concept of sustainability was created in 1987 by the UN supported Brundtland Commission. And basically there the three aspects were taken together and said that sustainability is sustainable, or development is sustainable when these three aspects are equally considered in development, right? So, from then on, there have been different takes on how sustainability is to be practiced. And we can say that this, when we look at these different takes or perspectives, then the strong sustainability stance says that we as humans have not created new resources which could substitute natural resources. So if we use up natural resources, then this is not acceptable, because the future generations will then not have the resources that they need to live equally well. So this is a strong sustainability stance. This is more common to researchers, nature protection people, ecologists, but more and more also people in the politics and also in economy. And then the weak sustainability, it sounds really bad, but this is just, academic concepts. This is not meant as a judgment. And then the weak sustainability perspective says that we can still, if we are able to substitute the resources in general, then it is okay if we use up the natural resources. But the question is, have we as humanity created resources which could actually substitute the natural resources? And the answer is that not in an equal way, which would ensure that the people living now and living in the future would be able to live equally well. So this is the social justice aspect that comes with and the current and future generations.
Thank you. Thank you. And Kaidi, what role do local communities play in achieving urban sustainability, and how can their involvement be enhanced?
Yes. So actually, we didn't get too far with the previous question. So let me come back to the previous question. Your question was about sharing economy. So when we look at these two concepts of strong and weak sustainability, then sharing economy is something which is more common to the strong sustainability stance, because basically we can also look at three other concepts which are really relevant in helping us to understand and to build sustainability. And these are efficiency, consistency, and sufficiency. And basically, we can say that efficiency means that we use resources, materials, but also different other resources more efficiently. Consistency means that we also change the design of the process. And for example, circularity is part of that. And then there is also sufficiency, which means that we don't only change the way that the machines work or the organization works, but we also change the mindset behind the system. And this means that we are also open to reconsidering what actually means good life, and we are maybe able or willing to leave something unused or undone in order to support the bigger goal or bigger, let's say, well-being. And sharing economy is rather a part of sufficiency. So it's part of the latter. And sharing economy has to do with a shift in values. Some years ago, I was in Portugal doing fieldwork there, and it was very interesting talking to people there, because they said that Portugal has not been a wealthy country, and they really feel that they would like to be more sharing, like people in Germany, for example. Often also in apartment buildings, they have shared washing facilities and sort of different other facilities. But in Portugal, for example, people feel that now that they are able to own these things, they want to have their own. So this is just an example that this needs also a shift in sort of this concept of what is good life and how I can support or my good life, but also support the bigger game. Okay. Yeah. So that was about the sharing economy.
Okay. And then I asked you a question on the role local communities can play in achieving urban sustainability.
Yes. So the thing is that when we want to support sustainability, this is a very systematic process. And one of the biggest obstacles is that different stakeholders and participants don't really fully, are not really capacitated or able to understand different aspects. This is why we need capacity building for all participants. But when you ask specifically about, can you repeat, did you ask specifically about stakeholders?
I asked for the role of local communities.
Local communities, yes. Yeah. So the thing is that often the governance institutions and municipalities are overwhelmed with work. So they often use simple tactics like low participation scale tactics, like consultation. But this means that only a fraction of people get to know about the issue and get to say something about this issue. And this means that actually many people are not involved. And this is not, practice has shown that the results are not very good, because at the end of the process, you still have to start explaining and sharing to people and trying to make this process or change acceptable to them. So what we are doing, and I'm also doing in my work, we are trying to integrate deeper levels of cooperation between different stakeholders for sustainability. And this also means co-creation. But also working with different European agencies, what we see is that people talk about co-creation, but actually implementing it is a different thing. And this has also different aspects, because local communities, this is also a very diverse group of people. And sometimes there are some active people who have very specific, strong opinions. So it's also a question that there needs to be a skill of facilitating these talks and helping different perspectives come to light. Not only that the ones who speak louder or more often get their say and the others don't. So this is also a complicated process, facilitating it. And this is also why I would say that right now, the way that funding for sustainability transitions and transformations is designed is not optimal, because a lot of funding goes into technology investments, but much less goes into human capacity building, educating, retraining, capacity building. And this is actually very, very much needed to really support the change, because otherwise we might have the solutions, but people are not able to find the solutions, or they don't really understand the benefits of these solutions. And the local communities, at the end of the day, they are the ones who decide whether something gets done or not. So that's why it's so important to really include them.
Very interesting. And I want to ask you a question on from the perspective of businesses. How can businesses transition towards more sustainable production practices?
Yeah, so I think that right now on the global scale, when you talk about efficiency, consistency, and sufficiency, then I think that this efficiency revolution is on the way. That many businesses, this is part of the normal business model, that they try to use resources more efficiently. The consistency revolution is maybe in, let's say, in early stages still. So in some countries, this is more advanced. In some also fields, it's more advanced. But overall, it's not very advanced. So I think that understanding what circularity means for your business is very important. And there are different practices which you can implement in order to make your business model from this linear model into a circular model, so that it really helps to create a more sustainable business environment and contribute to decarbonizing in a way which is also caring for the social environment where the business is operating and located, and also will not impact environment in a negative way.
Well said. The other question that I wanted to get your perspective on was on consumer behavior. And I'm noticing all over the world, the young are very conscious of sustainable practices and products.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what role does consumer behavior play in promoting sustainable consumption?
Yeah, I think that this has also changed a lot during the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Of course, it has always been the consumer that votes through the currency that they use, the rupees, euros, dollars, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the consumer awareness has raised a lot. And in addition to that, also the social media plays a very, very crucial role in making and demanding for more transparency. So I think there are two takes or two perspectives. So one perspective says that this is like a story from the big companies, that individuals are responsible, and this is a very harmful story. I actually don't support this understanding of or perspective, because I see that when you as an individual can do something about the situation which concerns you, then it always makes you feel better in comparison to when you feel that you cannot make a difference and you're overwhelmed or stressed or frustrated. So I think this always is a better take to be ethical yourself and walk your talk.
Right.
And there is sufficiently information available, so you can do it, you can make your choices. So I do think that actually consumers are a big force, and especially now when there is so much social media and pressure through that for more transparency, accountability. Yeah, I do think that we as individuals play an important role.
You, a few minutes back, you spoke about technology. And I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the role of technology in supporting transition for sustainability?
Yeah, I think that technology is very important in supporting this transition, in facilitating it, in making it more accessible, and also more systematic, more, let's say, yeah, I think accountable is a good word. However, there are also different gaps and issues here. As I mentioned before, I think in terms of attention and funding, too much emphasis goes into development of different technologies and too little into the human capacity building. I think there a shift needs to take place. because without sufficient understanding and readiness from the society, the technologies alone are by far not sufficient. And I also think that, but maybe when we want to keep the answer short, let's stick to that.
Okay, so I have time for 2 more questions for you. My next question is, what do you see the relationship between cultural aspects and societal change when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, well, I would say that, well, when in the beginning we talked about the different worldviews, and paradigm is also a word which is used. And in systems thinking, there is a thinker whose name is Donella Meadows, and she's very well known for the limits to growth. She's one of the co-authors of this report. But also she has talked about 12 leverage points, and basically these are the points which allow us to understand and change the systems. And she also says that the strongest leverage points, where you have to put in the less effort to achieve the biggest change, have to do with changing the paradigms. But this, again, as we said, and this is, in a way, it has a parallel to the sufficiency thinking, because this also has to do with change, not only in the way that the systems or machines are working or the organization is done, so in the overall framework. So I think that the cultural situation is highly important. And this is also one of the gaps in sustainability thinking. For some reason, culture is so complicated that it's often factored out of sustainability discourses, or factored in a very limited way. So in terms of indigenous cultures or cultural heritage, but not really the sort of like the bigger scheme of things which actually informs our values. Which actually informs the way that we conduct our lives. So I would say that without really becoming more reflexive and conscious about the role that culture in the broader sense plays in sustainability transitions, hindering or supporting it, it is very, very difficult, or actually almost impossible to achieve like groundbreaking breakthroughs.
Well said.
But it is so important because we are facing very serious.
Culturally, we are all very, very different, and therefore our understanding of sustainability can be very different. And my last question to you, Kaidi, what are some of the emerging trends in sustainability that you are most excited about?
Yeah, there is no surprise here. I'm not so much excited about maybe different smaller trends, but I'm most excited about the sufficiency becoming a trend. So this means that it's not only about changing the way that certain practices are done, or certain machines or technological solutions allow us to do certain things, which is also great and can be really, really important to make fact-based decisions. And maybe in that light, next to sufficiency thinking, so a change also in the mindset, I think it's also really, really important, and this should be a bigger trend in sustainability. We have to really, in order to do that and make the fact-based decisions also for the decision makers in different levels, we need actually to create more systematic ways of collecting data. Because when we have the technology needs the data, and also sustainability assessment needs valid data. And this is one of the problems across the world, which hinders us in actually understanding the situation where we are in sustainable development. Because when we don't have similar data to be compared, or also simply lack data on certain issues, then it is really, really hard to say where we are. And I think that, so these two things are most important, and I'm really rooting for more systematic data collection, and not only then quantitative but also qualitative data collection. And then also more I really hope that in sustainability thinking, the sufficiency would become a stronger trend, and the sufficiency wave or revolution would be the next after the circularity.
And on that note, and your two trends, which is availability of more data and more data and sufficiency. Thank you, Kaidi, for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of sustainability. Thank you for
Thank
all
you
the
for
great work that
inviting.
you are doing in sustainability for our planet. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.